I'm Mike Coyle, and you're watching Insidexploration. Today I'm here with Vance White, President and CEO of Noble Mineral Explorations, listed on the TSX Venture under NOB. Vance, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Mike, and thanks very much for having me. Appreciate it.
So it's been a little while since we were on site, and I know you've had a lot of things on the go. COVID's kind of pushed you back a little bit, but why don't you start off this by kind of giving us a little bit of an update about what you've been doing on the Project 81 land package.
Basically, as a result of COVID, it's made it difficult for everybody to really sort of liaise on a basis where you're not in a position to have in-person meetings, notwithstanding the fact that we can do these Zoom calls. And at the same time, with all of our various suppliers and or like our bookkeeping crew and whatnot working remotely, it means that there's a time lag with respect to getting things initiated, things through to their completed format. Nevertheless, we have entertained a number of different opportunities within the Project 81, which include a new airborne program over the Dargaville Trend, which is going to extend from Lennox through up into Bradburn Township. I expect that is going to be underway. I know they were mobilizing this week, so it should be underway next week sometime, and we should get the definitive reports back on that likely within a couple of weeks. That is going to provide us with underlying data and interpretive information that will follow up with the drill program slated with Dargaville, which is being funded jointly by a group of private investors and Noble in order to earn a 50-50 interest in that project. It's going to be following up on a drill hole that was drilled back in the 1960s, I believe it was, by Inco, wherein they identified a gold zone as well as a PGM zone that were interesting to the point there. I don't have the grades right off the top of my head, but I think it was in the order of about 3 grams over 8+ feet and fairly close to surface. We're not sure that they drilled the proper location there, and they got to remember that Inco at that time was drilling for nickel and not precious minerals. If our interpretation of the iron formation there is correct, it may mean that they didn't get the proper intersection in the fold zone, and that's what we'll be going after, and that's why we're going forward with that airborne project.
So you've got the private company. This has been a moot point for some investors, and personally, I see that they're spending a lot of money on the project. You know, they're helping Noble advance it. What does it mean to have these guys as part of your project, and how are they helping you? Because shareholders have a lot of questions about the secrecy, if you will. There seems to be a little bit of a limited amount of information coming out of the private company's activities. So can you kind of give us a little bit of an idea of what they're doing and how they're helping you advance this project?
Well, we're still waiting on the completion of a report, which I understand is in the course of being prepared relative to the work that they carried out in Carnegy Township, where I know they've drilled a number of different targets. I know they want to do some follow-up work in there. And of course, the project in Carnegie, in that it sits immediately north of the Kidd complex, is of interest. I know that the principals of that group are very interested in seeing if they can't identify an additional VMS target. You got to remember that the Kidd mine, having produced in the order of about 160 million tons, it would be considered a world-class mega VMS deposit. And these mega deposits on a global basis normally are associated with satellite deposits that could run anywhere from 30 to 50 million tons. This is primarily what they're after in the Carnegie. Now, they've also been helpful with respect to the the one drill hole that we put down in Calder. That deal called for us to put down one drill hole based on an airborne target on a 50-50 basis. We're waiting on the final report there. We've got some initial results back on an 11-meter intersection in that drill hole, but it doesn't look very hopeful rather from the initial results that we've received, and consequently, I think we'll move on from that.
What are you targeting in Calder, Vance?
That was initially an EM mag target that was identified by Walsh in their airborne program that we carried out in, I think it was either 2017 or 2018. And it was a fairly decent looking trend. It was about a 900-meter trend. We did identify massive sulfides, but massive sulfides didn't carry economic grade material.
So in Carnegy, they drilled a couple of holes. My understanding is they also did some downhole geophysics. Is that going to be part of the report? That's
what I understand. I haven't seen the results of that downhole geophysics. I'm really very interested in that. It may mean that what my understanding of downhole geophysics, it may mean that they were on the edge of that conductor that they drilled. Consequently, they're going to have to go back in and put a couple more holes down on that.
That's fair. So they're going to continue on working with NOB and trying to help you advance different areas of the Project 81?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're very much involved with the group. They've been tremendously supportive with respect to not only the programs that they've taken on individually, but also with respect to bringing in their own networks of individuals into the company and bringing the awareness to the marketplace. They've been tremendously supportive, and I can only say really good things about them.
That's good. So outside of them, you have a JV with Spruce Ridge. My understanding is there's still a few targets that they have access to. It wasn't just Crawford. There's a few VMS targets, correct?
Oh, that's correct. The original program with Spruce was wherein they could identify specific VMS targets within Crawford Township. And after we acquired back and spun out the Crawford nickel asset to Canada Nickel, we provided them with the initial targets that they had, but also the right to acquire additional targets, but with NOB having the right to back into a 25% interest should they be successful in any of their endeavors there.
Now, do you maintain royalties on these as these JVs come in and they advance these projects?
Not on the Canada Nickel assets, but on any of the other mining claims that are in the Project 81 area. We will retain a 2% net NSR. You got to remember that the initial package of the Project 81 area included something in the order of about 79,000 hectares, of which about 29,000 hectares were mining claims that we staked after we had made the acquisition. Now, some of those mining claims have gone over to Canada Nickel, on which there is not a royalty. There is a royalty on the mining claims that comprise certain of the option deals that we have with Canada Nickel. There would also be a smelter, an NSR on any of the mining claims that we have outside of those option properties and or in Carnegy or any of the other townships that we've acquired. Does
that include the targets that Spruce Ridge still has access to?
Any mining claims, not the patents, but the mining claims, yes. The patents, Franco-Nevada retains the royalty. We were successful in negotiating the royalty down from a 5% NSR last year as part of this whole deal that we put together with Canada Nickel. And I think I recognized that when we first put this deal together with Abibo, which subsequently became Resolute, that the 5% NSR would likely be a non-starter with respect to any major or any partner coming into the play. And I recognized, however, at the same time, that I'd never seen a 5% or an NSR stand in the way of a development or a developing opportunity. But consequently, they always would get renegotiated in some form. So we were successful in being able to negotiate with Resolute, the royalty holder, a right whereby we would be able to negotiate the acquisition of that NSR, and Franco-Nevada would back off their first right of refusal in the event that we would terminate a 5% royalty and introduce a new 2% royalty on behalf of Franco-Nevada on the patented mining lands only, thereby retaining a 2% net smelter royalty for Noble on the mining claims that we had staked in that project area.
So can we expect Spruce Ridge to be drilling some point over the next few months here, trying to get to those VMS targets?
I think what we're trying to do is get everything all wound up with respect to the spin out that we had and the obligations that Noble has to Spruce. We're very close to having that finalized. I would expect to see that done within the next couple of weeks.
Excellent. So outside of the private company and Spruce Ridge, have you had any positive conversations, maybe trying to get somebody to come in on Lucas?
We've got somebody looking at the Lucas. It's going to require some deep pockets on that project, but we do have now, as a result of the drilling program that we carried out in 2018, an understanding of the geology of that deposit. We have an understanding that we're dealing with about a 1,700 meter strike length there. We've drilled approximately 600, 650 meters of that strike length, but we also have an additional 5 parallel zones that have been totally untested. So what I'm saying is that it's likely going to require somebody with fairly deep pockets, and depending on the marketplace and the financial capital markets at the time, that will drive what kind of deal we'd be able to put together with respect to that partner coming in. But I anticipate that we will be able to find a partner for that Lucas project. And we got to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that our business model is one whereby we've taken out the initial risk associated with the early stage exploration, whether it be by way of airborne programs or initial drilling programs, to the extent that we now have multiple drill ready targets to either auction or joint venture out, with the idea being that the next level of risk being the drill and or confirmation drilling by third parties to identify resource blocks that we can then move forward to on some sort of joint venture basis, but at the same time retaining either a cash or cash and equity interest in those joint venture partners, such that we benefit as a result of that. It provides Noble with an additional liquidity opportunity should it so wish to execute with respect to the disposition of certain of those positions. And consequently, I mean, our treasury right now is in fairly decent shape with the 2.5 million shares of Canada Nickel that we have in place. There's additional shares that will be coming from our shareholding in Spruce. We have a fairly large position in Spruce, being 8 million shares and 10 million warrants at Nickel. And I quite like their Newfoundland copper project. And of course, copper is going to be significantly in demand down the road. And with that Spruce project, they've got a very high grade, very close proximity to a mill that is currently on care and maintenance basis right now, and consequently could be in a fairly short near-term cash flowing position. And then on top of that, we've got our McDonald interest, which is getting some encouragement out of a very large project up in the Sudbury area. And I think it's something that, certainly from a stock technical standpoint, looks like it's about ready to break out. I expect that we'll be seeing some results out of that over the very near term. I understand that the company's been undertaking a 3D modeling project of that area, which I think when it comes to marketplace is going to very well explain what it is that McDonald is onto there. And I hold some very high hopes for the way that project is going to evolve certainly as relates to where we stand with respect to gold prices and precious metal prices in the marketplace at this time.
So it sounds like you have a pretty decent portfolio, some possible liquidity there if you need access to funds. Got a couple of good projects on the go. But one of those is Canada Nickel. And this has been the big story for Project 81. And I really don't think Noble's getting any credit for the fact that, you know, CNC is working within your Project 81 and it's showing the great potential. And I mean, they've just hit Crawford. So talk to us a little bit about not necessarily Crawford, because I think the market's kind of aware of what Crawford is now and what it's developing into, but these other 5 targets. I mean, you and I, we've talked about Kings Mill before and the potential at Kings Mill. What are these other targets, including Kings Mill? What do you really think they could add to the overall resource for Canada Nickel?
Well, look, when we brought Canada Nickel into play, our business model was one of project development.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done is we've benefited our Noble shareholders by spinning our interest, or a portion of our interest,
mm-hmm.
out to our Noble shareholders. And consequently, if you take a look at what the impact is, the individual Noble shareholders not only benefit directly with respect to whatever Noble carries on forward with, but also from the benefit of the Canada Nickel. Now, Canada Nickel's onto a major deposit there. The PEA on that is likely going to be available by the end of the year. There may be a preliminary on that probably by the end of September or something like that. I know they're going through various metallurgical testing at this point in time, but it's a very large deposit. But it has tremendous PGM potential as well. And I don't know that the marketplace has really started to kick that into place, but that down the road is going to be a big time sweetener for that project. And consequently, our Noble shareholders, should they wish to retain their interest in Canada Nickel, are going to have that benefit as a result. With respect to the other option properties, with Mark Selby being brought into Canada Nickel and their team, having gone through the exercise with respect to the development of the Dumont deposit in Quebec, which is very similar geology to what we're dealing with here in Project 81. They've been able to take that right from the exploration stage through to the permitted stage. And you look at the Canada Nickel deposit itself, the grades in the Canada Nickel Crawford deposit seem to be look better than the ones that they had with respect to the Dumont. But at the same time, you're looking at other nickel targets within Project 81. And I felt it was only appropriate that we have these nickel experts, Mark being one, that's recognized on a global basis, an industry-wide basis, being the guy that should spearhead those nickel potentials for and on behalf of Noble, who will have the right to back into a joint venture interest down the road. At the same time, if you take a look at the value of that deal, it's the equivalent of, should they exercise on all 5 options and they exercise on the right of acquisition with respect to certain of the surface rates, you're looking at about a $13 million deal there.
Yeah.
And the marketplace hasn't recognized that, I don't think, but and that's beside the point. But I recognize it for what it is, to the point where you're going to have expenditures carried out over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, at which point in time you're then going to be able to determine, should you be able to advance that project on a joint venture basis, whereby Noble will retain its 25 or 20% interest in a joint venture. Consequently, I think that what we've done for Noble, as well for Canada Nickel, which we happen to be a fairly large shareholder, is to the benefit of both companies.
Yeah. So do you foresee Mark really stepping out and doing some exploration on the other targets this year, or is the focus, do you think, Crawford?
Well, let me put it this way. I know that they've requested all of the data set relative to all of those 5 option properties, and they're going through it right now. And I know that the one that's most advanced is the one that we drilled back in 2012, which is the Kings Mill. And we know that we're looking at very, very wide widths. We know that there's cobalt associated with the nickel. We also feel that there's likely PGMs, which we did not take an awful lot of or pay an awful lot of attention to at the time, but I believe it's not going to be dissimilar to the Crawford.
So it sounds like you're pretty active as you can be in light of COVID. You're open for business. Hopefully you can bring in some more joint ventures. I know the market retail is looking for more joint venture deals after the royalty was sorted out. So what would you say to your shareholders now, Vince? Like sit tight, give us a few months, or would you say we're going full bore here and get ready, buckle your seatbelts because we're gonna go for a ride?
I think the whole thing is really dependent upon the junior resource financial capital markets, which in my view are starting to see very promising impact. Uh, once we get through this COVID, however long that's going to take, who knows? But once we get through that, I mean, you take a look at any one of these uh, international global markets,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's talking about global infrastructure spend.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to have an impact with respect to commodity prices. I mean, you just take a look at Pacific Electric out west. I mean, all of those transmission lines out there are going to need huge copper supplies down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just see that. And copper is one of the leading indicators with respect to commodity pricing. You see copper prices start to move, the rest will start to follow as well. And that's going to have an impact with respect to exploration, with respect to financial resources flowing into the capital markets, which is definitely going to have an impact on Noble.
And given your portfolio and your cash position, do you foresee having to go to the market for funds at all this year?
Not right away, no.
No. Well, that's good. Well, Vance, thank you so much for the update. Really appreciate it. We'll cut this one off here, and we'll get together maybe in the next couple of months and kind of discuss what you've done on the project, Dark Vale particularly, and some of the geophysics you've done. And look forward to speaking with you again.
Great, Mike. Thanks very much. Appreciate the call.
Cheers.
Have a great day. Cheers.